Was that book called Bowerbird?
One of them was called Bowerbird.
That would make sense, because if you know about the bowerbird,
Yeah.
you know, it collects all of these blue
Bits,
items for its
Nest.
nest to attract a mate. And it's very specific about what it collects.
Yeah, right.
So that would sort of, if it is that book,
would you say that's me now?
I'm like, you're a
5 years
bowerbird.
later? I think I'm experiencing podcasts differently now that we've started one.
Oh.
Like I was listening to one yesterday and I'm like, they really do just like talk about anything.
Yeah, yeah. As in, do you think a podcast now is even more believable to you?
Yes.
Than, yeah.
Oh, and it was, I can't remember who I was listening to because I listened to a few while we were mulching yesterday. But they were talking about how the future of politicians need to be able to do a 3.5 hour long form podcast more than they need to be able to stand up and answer questions in a formal debate in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And the questions are like, you know, dumbed down and scripted. And like the future is, can you have an intelligent conversation for 3.5 hours?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I've heard that part of the reason for that too is that the rise of AI, it's going to be much more difficult to fake that stuff. Like people are used to just sharing soundbite stuff, but now what you find happens is someone will share a soundbite and then immediately underneath that post, people will go, well, here's the full clip, watch it in context.
That's awesome. Community notes for the win.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's going to become important, but all this stuff's just going to get easy to fake.
That, and whoever I was listening to, maybe I'll put it in the notes when I remember. It was, they were talking about how basically you have to be authentic. If you, with the rise of like this, you know, the death of legacy news and legacy media and the rise of the podcaster, it's the rise of the genuinely authentic rather than polished, scripted. It's like, I want to know what you think. Doesn't really matter if you don't agree with me, like, let's have a conversation. And I'm very drawn and attracted to that, I think, because it's like probably what we were talking about last week, like it's real.
Yeah, we were saying that, weren't we? Like that, yeah, making a YouTube episode, you get to be a little bit polished, but making an unedited podcast, that's it. Here I am.
Yeah. It's
funny, actually, if I think about that, like the beginnings of television and television news and that, and we're way off topic, but it doesn't matter. If I think about the beginnings of TV news and that, it was probably a lot like that because there wasn't the technology or the time or the expertise to make something really fake. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were filming the news, like a lot of the times it was live and there was the button, and do you remember hearing about like the 8-second delay? Like if they called up someone and they swore on air, like the producer had 8 seconds to hit the mute button. Otherwise that's
a long time.
That was going live. Well, but you think back in the day when all of that was new to everyone, you know, you'd moved from the radio to all of a sudden this is live on you see everything, you hear everything. And then now over the course of, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years, that's become really polished and scripted and camera tricks and AI and graphics and all of that. And so...
Well, we did edit out your sneeze last week.
Yeah, and then he edited it back in.
So what do we want to talk about today?
Well, we built a tiny home.
We did.
2.5 years ago, something like that. So the short timeline is we built it, Mum and Dad lived in it for 1.5 years, and then we moved it out here and we've been in it for just over a year.
So it would have to be the end of 22.
I reckon we're coming up on 3 years since we started building it. Yep. And the question that we always get, all the questions, is how did you do it? How much did it cost? What's the process? How does it compare to buying one? But I want to back up a little bit further from that, because this is really your, and we will do a tiny home video, like a full tour video, and probably one of the reasons that we haven't yet.
It won't take very long.
Yeah, is there enough
small.
content for a 25-minute video? Oh, no, I think people are interested because, you know, there's that whole YouTube channel, and he does...
Living Big in a Tiny Home.
Living Big in a Tiny Home. He does tiny home tours.
I love that.
Yeah.
I follow him on TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great. And what I love about it is every design is, you know, there's some common features, loft beds and that sort of stuff, and how to work in narrow spaces, but every layout is slightly different, and there's all these unique little ideas. It's like when you work out how, you know, caravans work, like, isn't that clever? Like, back up a little bit from all of that, because we will do a tour, and I think we were thinking when the deck's built, but maybe we'll do it sooner than that.
You can see it in... I think our year 1 video, we do a little bit of a, like...
And there was a short that we did when we were first starting out. We did a short on...
Maybe we can link that.
Oh, that's a good idea. We'll link those down in the show notes.
Oh, dear.
My question is, and because it really was your desire, I loved the idea, but this was your drive. Why did you want to build a tiny home?
When did we start talking about it?
Well, obviously more than 3 years ago.
It was after we bought this land, and when we started to think about and see the, I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel, but the light at the end of the tunnel of having children at home.
Yeah.
I love my children, but when we started to be able to see a life after being full-time parents,
or when the
kids started moving out,
what's that going to look like?
That happened probably 5 years ago, when we started to really go, oh, we're going to have a life after children, even though you never really do, but it won't be like day-to-day defined by their schedules and driving them around.
All their needs.
Like, we homeschooled them, so our lives have been quite defined by them for 20 years.
Yep.
I think that's when we started to kind of go, it would be so cool to live in a tiny house, because it would just be so much easier, like a less of a burden to look after, like in terms of looking after a home. But I think that we kind of stumbled into, as part of the homesteading 180, I think we stumbled into the consumerism 180 as well.
What do you mean by that?
Well, me in particular, I don't know if anybody will remember in Australia, but Kmart went through this amazing, like, revolution, and all of a sudden it was really trendy to have Kmart decor in your house.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, have you got the latest Kmart thing? Like, it was this, like, more than a trend. It was this, like, revolution of...
There were shows on TV at the time like that, The Block, where they would build, you know, and they would all use Kmart stuff, right? I think I remember that,
in the challenges, definitely. And I jumped hard on that bandwagon because I'm a pretty creative person, but it does not manifest itself in, like, painting or drawing or even music.
Yeah.
Like, it does. You and the kids have definitely got that in spades, but mine is decor, I think. I found.
Oh, I think it's broader than that. I think it's spaces.
Definitely that interior design and the atmosphere of a place was something that became really important to me just before my breakdown.
Yeah.
Like, it was me trying to, like, heal myself and give myself some safe spaces and things like that. Yeah. I was on the deck at Burleigh as we looked over the canal. Like, remember before it was like that fantastic furniture table and chairs, and that was it.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. Like, this grey and black set of chairs and maybe a candle. Like, it was I was not super big on anything like that. And then, I don't know what it was, but I got really inspired and we did that makeover. Maybe I got into, like, watching The Block or Renovation Rumble or something like that. We definitely watched
one of those shows a lot,
And I was like, that really excites me and, like, ignites me. And so we redid that deck. Remember with all the that's when we bought these festoon lights.
I just remember building tons of pallet furniture.
Yeah, because we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And that like I jumped on the maximalist bandwagon. It was all about like stuff.
So, okay. Now I'm picking up where you're going
Yeah.
with the consumerism
Yeah,
180.
like it was all
we're
about
getting
like,
there.
let's have all the stuff. And I filled that house with stuff. Do you remember? Then we started to go to, what was that not thrift store, like the antique store that I went to, that I loved, Heath's Old Wares. You took me to Bangalow.
Oh yeah.
And I bought like some really cool pieces for my birthday.
I'm looking around going, there's probably like an old wooden ladder here somewhere in the
I think the
background.
ladder's in waiting for the deck. It's in storage waiting for the deck.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to get ruined.
Yeah.
And I really got hard out into like my country style magazine, and I was like hooked on all of that. But when we moved from Burleigh to Benogan, remember that house was double the size?
Yeah.
Yep. And it was like, we got to fill this.
Yeah.
And this was all at the same time as we were like working out about food and everything like that. And I kind of just moved into this like, let's have all of the beautiful stuff.
So you're saying on the one hand, you went down a really positive, healthy track with food, but then on the other hand, you were like drawn into this whole consumerism, decor.
What does it look like?
Yep.
And what does it feel like? It was definitely driven by what does it feel like. But then when we moved from Benogan to the Northern Rivers, that house was smaller than even Burleigh. Remember, it was that little cottage and we had to renovate it.
So I was going to ask,
I'm probably just like, here's my
That's all right.
arc. Does that make sense?
I felt like, and so you fill in the blanks for me, but I felt like the mindset shift towards thinking about a tiny home as a possibility came when we, and you maybe were about to say this, when we downsized.
When we downsized, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we'd filled this 6-bedroom house or whatever it was.
It's
crazy.
stupid huge, yeah.
We had a couple of families living with us during that time though as well, so it was good to have a big house.
Part of that story is we didn't actually pick that place because it was 6 bedrooms and all of that.
Gosh,
we picked it because it was an acre and a half.
Yeah,
and we
fully.
wanted to start doing some of that suburban homesteading stuff.
But I wasn't okay with empty spaces
How
anymore.
empty it was, yeah. Yeah.
And then when we moved to the cottage, there was so much stuff that just sat in storage. And we just shuffled it and shuffled it and shuffled it and shuffled it. And I was like, this is dead weight. This is full dead weight. And I just started to chuck stuff out. And so it was probably the journey from maximalism to minimalism. And I then went, you know, we're extreme people. We went full down that, like, get rid of everything that does not serve a purpose or that we don't really truly love. It was there that I threw out, like, we created a storage box each of keepsakes. Because while I'm the minimalist, you hoard everything.
Like I'm typical. Like I've got that box of cables that everybody's got from every device I've ever
You have more than
owned.
one box of cables. You have got like 15 boxes of cables.
You just never know if you're going to need that cable.
It's still in the storage container.
I've had a hard time letting go. Question about that.
Yeah, but that was like first steps, I guess.
Was it the just practicality of moving from a stupidly big house to a little country cottage that forced you into thinking about minimalism, or was there, was there a mindset shift before that was like, we have too much stuff, or do you think the two just kind of went hand in hand?
It probably went hand in hand with wanting to live a more sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that as we moved into that homesteading mindset, I was just like, I don't need all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve me. It is not really, like, I'm not going to build my identity around it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it hasn't stopped me from having, like, cool pieces. Most people are like, why do you have half a windmill? I'm like, because I saw it in a country style magazine and I loved it. And it looks like it was made to go there. It was the move into the cottage and then having to just purge that I was like, oh, I don't need all of this stuff to function. And I think it was around the same time that Alia bought me a book for Christmas. Sabella Court. A lot of people will know Sabella Court.
That's right.
It was like a coffee table book because, you know, I love my coffee table books. And I remember reading it on Christmas Day, you know, a couple of margaritas. And it was all about, I can't remember the name of it because I've got a few, but it was about the different things that you have in your home, what purpose they serve, and whether they bring you joy or not. I remember it was a chapter in the book about all different kinds of scissors. And I'm like, this is such a random thing. And then I read a sentence that it was like, if you must have a pair of scissors, have a pair of scissors that you really love and that you enjoy using.
Hence your really nice scissors.
And I went, it was like a light bulb came on and I was like, that's what it means. It's not about having all the stuff or the latest stuff.
Yeah.
To me, it was like, let's curate the things that we have.
Yep.
So that the everyday pieces and the everyday things that I use are things that I love and enjoy. I like using, I like looking at them. They can become the things that decorate our house and our lives. And I don't need extra stuff for that. I'll just do that with the everyday items in my home. And so from there is when I started to like purge of anything that I didn't love.
Extra scissors.
And I didn't do it like chuck it out and buy all new stuff. It was just a gradual process. As things ran out, I gave a lot of stuff away, gave a lot of the kids' toys and stuff to family, like just started to purge. And I think it was there when it came time for us to go, oh, what are we going to do after the kids move out? I'm like, let's live in a tiny house. Because to me, it clarifies down even more.
Yep.
You can't have stuff that you don't use in here.
Yeah,
There's no room for it.
Was that book called Bowerbird?
One of them was called Bowerbird.
That would make sense because if you know about the bowerbird, you know, it collects all of these blue items for its nest to attract a mate. And it's very specific about what it collects.
Yeah, right.
So that would sort of, if it is that book.
Would you say that's me now?
I'm like, you're
like
a bowerbird.
5 years later?
You know exactly what you need to put in that space.
Yeah.
And you don't have multiple pairs of scissors. You quite literally only have one really nice pair.
That's where I know. That's how I know. When we were living in the cottage, I'd be like, children,
who stole the scissors?
So when Noah moved out, I bought a set of scissors the same. That was my gift.
Yeah.
Here's your own scissors.
Yeah.
But it's the same as everything. Like we've got open shelves, so I could have cutlery, or I could have cutlery that I love. I can have plates and I can have cups and I can have so many different things. But actually what I'm going to have is a few items that are handmade or that are really meaningful or important that we've curated. And then they bring me joy. I don't just use them, I can look at them. I enjoy using them. Everything has a purpose or multiple purposes.
Yeah, true. Yep.
So I think that was the step before, and I'm like, we could do this in a tiny house, because as I clarified, because really it has been me that's driven this, I'm like, we could do this in a tiny house and it would be so much easier to keep it clean. Like any mother who's come to the end of having children in her house, you're sick and tired of keeping a house. I'm sick and tired of keeping a house. I'm sick and tired of cleaning, you know, one whole day of my weekend being cleaning. It takes me 2 hours to deep clean that, like deep clean.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
There's so many attractive things
about a tiny home
to me.
So we'll get to the build and how we did it and all that sort of thing. But I guess I wanted to ask about why do you think that mindset of hoarding exists? And maybe I'll say what I think about myself and, you know, why that is such a, you actually can't just move into a tiny home.
No.
There is like such a process and a journey that you've got to go through. Why do I have a box of cables in my shed, for example?
Because every man has a box of cables.
But I also think it comes from probably a scarcity mentality.
Yep.
And that's really hard to break out of, because when you're a kid, you know, you are told to look after your stuff. You know, like, take care of your things. Don't just leave your stuff outside. Remember JJ's report card was always...
JJ does not look after his personal belongings.
It's always like, where's JJ's hat? Oh, it's out on the bag rack. You know, that would be in the report card.
Where's JJ's bag?
But it becomes one of those things that you want to teach kids is, you know, like, value things that are valuable. I feel like, though, perhaps what we don't get taught is how to delineate between what's valuable and what's not. And so you almost feel like everything becomes valuable, especially if you've had to pay money for it, or if you've ever come across the circumstance where you just needed that one thing, you knew you had it, but you also knew you threw it out. So a cable, you know. And
or you knew you had it, but it was unorganized.
And you couldn't find it.
Couldn't find it, so you just bought another one.
That's
times
what I'm
that
saying.
by 10 times and you've got excess.
But it's not always, if you actually think that process through, it's not always a good financial decision in terms of, you know, a HDMI cable or something that you need that you're like, oh, I've got that cable in this shed, and then, you know, oh, thank goodness I had that, went and plug it in. But actually the thing's been sitting in a box and it's got moisture damage on it and it's going, and, you know, that cable's $20 or something. So dollars are dollars, I get that. But there's this ingrained thing in you that, and I think it comes from being raised by parents who had parents post-war. You know, there's this generational thing that happens, or post-depression, both probably, but there's this generational thing that probably happened 50, 60 years ago or more, where, and particularly because, like, we live in this, like you were saying about consumerism, this age now where, you know, stuff's just easy to make and manufacture and that. But, you know, 50 to 100 years ago, an item that was crafted and made, it, you know, definitely didn't come from China. And so valuable things actually had quite a lot of value. And I think so that mindset down through the generations of don't throw stuff out, like look after your stuff, store it, put it into a box, keep it, you never know when you're going to need it. It's hard to break out of that mindset. And unfortunately, I think that the breakout of that mindset has come with that high production manufacturing of cheap crap.
Everything's disposable.
Yeah, and so there's kind of two ways to break out of that mindset, is what I'm seeing from that. Is one, we don't have to think that way. I don't have to clutter my life up with stuff anymore. I don't have to keep every last cable or keep every birthday card that was ever written to me.
I'm so glad this is recorded.
You're going to hold me to this. But that mindset can be replaced by one of two things, exactly what you were talking about with that bowerbird mentality of specific things that serve a specific function, that bring me joy, that serve a function. Or, don't worry about it, that, you know, I can get that cable for $2 off Temu now.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question to you was, what was that journey like for you in terms of how much of that was, did you have to wrestle with that mentality of stuff is valuable?
In terms of, did I have to come to that conclusion?
Well, what I'm saying is I think you had a far easier job of downscaling our lives and preparing us for tiny home life. Why was that easier for you? How did you do the mental work?
It was an evolution.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it definitely came along the same time as waking up.
Yeah.
Definitely. When we woke up to the fact that the food that was on the shelves in the grocery store was not necessarily good for us. You know, you start to question everything. That was when I started to look more closely at where our money was being spent. I definitely didn't spend my days shopping anymore. Like, I didn't have to have a high turnover in wardrobe. That's when I started a capsule wardrobe back in the day, remember?
Yeah.
The Project 333. I did 33 items for 3 months and put everything else away to see whether I could live with 33 items in my wardrobe.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't have been able to work out how to have all of my clothes in a tiny house wardrobe if I hadn't started
Yeah, interesting.
10, 12 years ago with the idea of a capsule wardrobe. Less clothes, better quality, more of an investment. And yeah, it hurts at the start to buy, you know, $150 to $200 pair of jeans as opposed to a $20 Kmart pair. But I still have those $200 jeans.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it hurt at the start because it was that investment, but it was just like for 6 months, I didn't buy anything.
Mm.
And I worked out that I didn't need it. It was me putting little things into practice. The first one was the capsule wardrobe. The second one was when we moved to the cottage and like all of our excess stuff just sat there. And then we
didn't have space for it. There wasn't even a
move
shed.
it 6 months later, still
Yeah.
didn't use it. And then we moved it 6 months later and I'm like, oh, I'm not actually using this stuff. I'm just moving it around. I'm just shuffling stuff.
Yeah.
And it's taking up time and energy in my mind because I'm like, oh, look at all that stuff. It's so ugly. We don't have anywhere to store it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I'm not actually using it. So why is it here?
Mm-hmm.
And but it was, I'd like to say that then we just dealt with all of it, but it was a process of letting go and learning to trust ourselves. Like I'd let stuff go. And then the next time I came to look at the pile of stuff that we never use, I'm like, wow, I'm not missing what I just let go of. And I'm not using this stuff and I'm not missing it. And so
that got easier.
It just got easier and easier.
Do you see an alignment between that time and giving up digesting mainstream media? And my thinking there was when you said, I didn't spend my days shopping anymore. And that's true. Like we didn't just go to the shops browsing anymore. There was kind of this moment where
No, because we were spending all of our money on gardens.
Yeah, that's true. So the budget didn't allow. But for a lot of people, that's an actual pastime. You know,
they
Saturday,
love it.
You go to the mall.
People
you go,
love it.
and you kind of that's your outworking of your finances and that. But what I'm saying is, once you like kind of cut off some of that mainstream television. I remember when we got rid of the TV antenna and just went, and that was like I was saying on the previous episode, I think, where we started like watching documentaries and like going, we're going to take control back of kind of what we're ingesting, how important that was for the kids, and just you really then start to notice advertising as this stark contrast, and it's like an affront to how you want to live your life, because I think you get raised in it and you don't notice how much it shapes what you should do with your money, how you should live your life, how dissatisfied you are because you don't have this thing. And then all of a sudden, when you find ways to cut that out of your life, and then you get put back in, like, think about now when we go to the coast and we go to the mall, shopping centre.
I actually feel sick.
It's
so
overwhelming.
It's so overstimulating.
I don't think a lot of people would understand even what that is, but it feels like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a scene in a movie where somebody just starts wigging out and lights and colours are spinning.
That scene in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when Willy Wonka goes crazy in the tunnel.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's
feels like
excellent.
A trip.
Yeah.
My vision literally blurs.
Yeah.
Because I'm so overstimulated.
It's the sounds, it's the,
it's the lights,
that thing that they say
brightness.
that all of the pokies in a casino all play music in the chord of C, because it's like, it's this harmonious sound, but they all work together and it's a happy chord. I feel like that's happening at the shopping centre with the music they play, the way they acoustically design the building, even to just make you feel happy. The smells, like I walk past some of those shops, those candle shops and stuff like that, and like I feel, I'm feeling it now actually. Like I feel gross about it. Come back up a little bit because we'll get back to talking about a tiny home. I feel like that happened over this process of time, and now I can walk through a shopping centre and go to exactly the shop that I need to. If I even have to, I try to go online or just go to little stores and support local if I can.
Yep.
But if I have to, I can walk right into the store, grab the salesman will come up. You need any help? No, know exactly what I need. Like I've already looked it up. I don't want to
browse.
Yeah, I'm not here to browse. I get the thing that I need. I get the hell out of there. that didn't just happen. You have to do this whole detox and you don't even know it's happening to you. And so I think like people look at what we're doing living in a tiny home and go, that is impossible. You must be some kind of weirdo hippie, you know, one
Yes.
with nature sort of thing. It's probably partially true.
Yes.
So
No, but I still love stuff.
yeah.
Like I don't love a lot of stuff, but like it's still really important to me. The things that are important to me are important to me. And that's okay, because the things that are important to other people are important to them. For me, I need a space to be really beautiful. You know, the barn door that we bought for the bathroom,
Yeah.
it could have just been a barn slider from Bunnings.
Yeah.
But I went to the salvage yard and I found this awesome old, well, it wasn't old, it was a barn door that was made out of old, what are they called? Weatherboards.
Yeah.
With all the paint peeling off, and I'm like, I love that. That's the one.
Yeah.
So I still enjoy stuff, but it's like it's in its place for me as a way to create an environment that I feel peaceful and happy in and that I enjoy. Like I have to have a coffee mug, so it may as well be a coffee mug that I really love.
Yeah.
I have to have wine glasses, so it may as well be wine glasses that I really love.
Yeah.
I think that's my relationship with stuff now. The stuff that I have is important to me. I take care of it. I invest in it. I try and buy small and local wherever I can. Sometimes that's not always hard. Like it really is. Like if you buy your socks from Kmart, then like that sometimes that's practical.
Yeah.
I buy the kids new underwear every year, like from Kmart.
Yeah.
Because that's
it's probably worth
part
pointing
of
out
it.
too, isn't it? You know, it's back to that whole like, what is that homesteading mindset or that self-sufficiency mindset? Is it a complete disconnect from everything that you've ever done in, or the way you do things in life? And you know, I was saying this previously, like it might be for some people that the food side of things is just growing one plant on their balcony in their apartment. You don't have to move out of your apartment. Like just wake up to something.
There was a comment yesterday, a lady commented on the first podcast and she said, I'm too old to be able to physically do that anymore, but I grow my own food, I preserve my own food, I make my own laundry and cleaning products. And to me,
that's amazing.
That's enough. That's good. I'm happy with that. And I'm like, right on. Like, congratulations, go you.
Yeah, because I think what I want to make sure that doesn't come across in these, you know, conversations and that is that we're advocating for this. It's all or nothing. If you don't do it all, you're not a real homesteader or whatever. But it is a mindset thing, and there is a balance. There's a real world that we live in where there really is a real Kmart, and you know. Think what you want about some of that stuff. I'd love to get to the point where we don't rely on factory stuff that's produced cheaply and probably unethically and that sort of thing. There is a reality to the world we live in at the moment, and some of that has been historically driven to a point where it's really hard to break away from some of those systems, you know, economically, you know, like in terms of the society that you live in, expectations that are on you and that. So yeah, I guess I say that to say we're not advocating that you have to only buy handmade coffee mugs from now on. If you've got a set of 6 Kmart coffee mugs...
That's the most sustainable thing that you can use is what you already have.
Well, that's true.
Yep.
That's true. Okay, so 3 years ago...
So it's a very long arc into why we chose...
Well, I think it's important because we definitely, you know, in our research, we started looking at it and going... oh, we don't even live small enough yet.
No.
Like there's going to come a moment where we do the downscale thing again.
Yeah.
And so, so you were saying for us, it was that the timeline motivation was that the kids were all reaching their later teenage years and adult life, and, you know, one's moved out, one, you know, still with us, one's sort of somewhere in between, you know, doing her own thing.
Did move out.
On the property, but her own thing.
Yeah.
And
she's building her own tiny house now.
Yeah. So there was, for us, that was like an easy moment, line in the sand to draw and go, well, that could be a time when we do that. But also, I want to point out, we didn't actually intend to be living in this tiny home right now.
No.
but there was a timing to it where we were looking to the future that inspired, well, what if we built a tiny home, and what if we shipped it out to this property? Because even if we didn't use it straight away, what an opportunity as
Yeah.
an income source to Airbnb it.
And you get to the point where you're like, do I really want to camp in the middle of winter?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it wasn't exclusively motivated. In fact, I'd say it wasn't at all motivated by this is going to be our next move. We're going to move into a tiny home.
I think we were getting to a point where we needed a new challenge and we needed a new project, but we weren't quite there in terms of moving on.
You have a lady beetle in your hair.
Hello.
She's gone.
Maybe the universe provides, I don't know. But when we started to kind of really take it seriously, it happened very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, do we buy one? Do we build one?
We looked pretty seriously into buying one.
Yeah.
I contacted quite a few because it was becoming really popular.
Yeah.
So it was starting to become quite affordable. And, at the time, the farm that we worked on had quite a few people that lived on site as well. Like we were in the cottage that was an existing building, but then there were, other farm hands and that were coming on. And we sort of got to say to them, it could be a live-on-site arrangement, but there's nothing for you. And so they were looking at, one did a bell tent thing, another one did like a hire cabin, but it was beautiful. And it was a shipping container conversion. So those sorts of things started to become quite available and affordable. And we might get into the costs of some of this later on, but I remember looking at it at the time going, oh, that's pretty expensive. I think, the quotes were around $100,000. But now that I sort of think about it, I'm like, I bet that's a bit lower now, and I bet it'd probably land pretty close to what we ended up or will end up spending on it once,
Yeah, when we looked at, do we buy it or what's the actual cost to build it, I got a bit fixated then on what would a design look like. And because we'd renovated the cottage, we knew we could do it. Like, Dad's a builder.
Yep.
We know a Sparky.
Yeah.
We've got friends who are all of the trades.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a bit like, why don't we build it ourselves? Because then at least we're designing it for ourselves based on what we like.
Yep.
How we work.
Yep.
Obviously, I got some pretty strong ideas about how I organise my kitchen and, all of that sort of thing. So when we did the cost analysis, I was like, I think we can build this ourselves, and I think that we can halve the price.
Well, it wasn't just that we could get the price right down, it's that we could pace it as well with our budget.
Definitely.
So, to buy it off the, out of the catalogue or off the plan, you've got to front up with the money, which we definitely didn't have.
No, I didn't. Well, I'd love to have $100,000 sitting around.
I think, let's pick a number. It's hard because I don't have an exact budget, but what do you reckon this was probably where it's at now is about $50,000 went into it?
I would say 65.
Okay.
By the end.
Now, where it sits right now?
Yep.
But that got quite paced out over,
Yeah.
And so, to tell the story then, we were already well and truly into the research, considering it, doing it. We'd started doing
Pinterest boards, plans.
We knew it was going to be a shipping container design because two things. One, they're movable. And so where we were at the time, we knew there was kind of an end date on that season of working on that farm.
Yeah.
Didn't have any idea when that would be, but knowing that whatever we build, we either have to build it out here on site.
Which would just never have happened.
We would just never get out here. You'd have to come out every weekend.
And we didn't have the tools here. It was very beneficial.
It was going to have to be movable.
In the backyard.
Yep. So there's that. And then there's the structural side of it too. From an engineering point of view, nothing's blowing this thing over, And so for me, we'd done renovations, interior stuff, little builds and things, farm sheds and that. So I felt pretty confident in our technical skills with some power tools and that. But in terms of, actually designing and engineering like a structure, I guess I wanted to skip that process. So it may actually be cheaper to do, and I've seen some pretty cool ones like on that channel, tiny home where you build everything, the frame,
Again, it's up to what the person wants.
But one of the motivations then came to us to be mum and dad. So we were already well and truly in that we're doing
R&D
this.
phase,
We're going to be doing this. I think we thought we probably had a bit longer than we did. But that's okay. We'd started to put some money aside. You know, we kind of had some ways to do it, or we kind of knew what we wanted to do. But then Mum and Dad all of a sudden needed a place to live and sort of in a hurry. And so that was like, we could use that as a motivation to get this done. And since our plan basically just was, it's funny, isn't it? Like when we were saying on last week's podcast or the week before about we bought this land when we started the urban homesteading thing and didn't really know at the time why we bought the land. We just had some good reasons for it, but they turned into like great timing. Same as this, I think, you know, and, you know, we built this tiny home. We didn't fully know. We had some motivations and reasons for building it, but it wasn't because we needed it.
The timeline escalated it. And so I think we blocked it.
The block, yeah.
It felt like it. It was 6 weeks from start to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get it, from shipping container delivered on site to basically livable, kitted out. And like you say, we've got some great friends. So, you know, Craig's a cabinet maker. So like installing the kitchen, you know, Nick's a sparky. So helped us with all of the electrical work and that. Your dad's a builder. So in terms of framing advice and all of that sort of thing, we definitely had a leg up there. I think of that YouTube channel. Oh, her name's Jazz, and I think it's, everyone will know her. She's in WA and she's building a container home. I think it's building a dream, living a dream, something like building a dream it might be. And like, you know, I watched some of her earlier videos and she rightly says, I'm doing this on my own and I had not even ever picked up a power tool. When you go back and watch her earlier videos, like, wow, like more power to you because it's clear you started green as. And I'm sure she's getting advice and stuff along the way because some of the things she's doing really well.
Yeah.
And so
and then there's other things that you need to like, you need to build to standards as well.
Course.
Like, so that it's not that you're making it up. You're like, well, I have to build it to this standard and I have to do the electrical to this standard. And
I often wonder that about like those videos that do really well online, like I built a log cabin in the woods. They're always super popular.
Yeah.
And there's kind of some, you learn if you watch enough of those, there's some kind of log cabin-y things that everyone does, and it just must be the way that you do it. But I watch a lot of those ones going, this is such a hack. Like, are you building any of this to code? Like, is it anyone? But I also feel like they are way, way up in the backcountry. Like, nobody cares, and it's probably just their hunting cabin anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was that, and we were doing it like pretty out in the open too. Like we weren't doing a log cabin out in the woods. Like we were doing this in our backyard.
Yep.
So we had to do it well.
Yep.
We had to make it livable because Mum and Dad were going to be moving into it in a couple of months. And we wanted that long-term thing of, you know, that was going to be a temporary thing.
It was a long-term investment for us.
But we always had in the back of our minds that we'd pick this thing up and probably bring it out here and put it on Airbnb. Yeah.
That was the idea. We didn't really have a solid plan.
It was probably just a solid reasoning to do it because otherwise why do it? But again, through hindsight, thank God we did it when we did it because it was just exactly the right thing we needed at the right time.
And we built it for us as well. We built it to suit ourselves.
Designed it for us.
Yeah, we designed it for ourselves. I wanted a full-size shower, did not want a camping shower, did not want a caravan shower. I wanted to be able to, like, there's certain luxuries that I'm like, I want a rainfall shower head because showers are awesome, you know? But now the outdoor shower is my favorite. Anyway.
So let's jump into that.
Okay.
What were some of the things that we decided on when it came to building a tiny home container home? This is a pretty specific tiny home, so there's lots of different types. There's, you know, the ones on wheels, there's, you know, bigger ones, smaller ones, some much smaller ones. So this is a 40-foot shipping container, and we wanted to really contain, it had to house us, so a couple, and it had to be bedroom, bathroom, living space, kitchen.
Yeah.
What kinds of things then did we start to throw into the mix, and how did we do it?
It was more like it's a rectangle, so it's not like you can play around with the layout too much. It's more like which goes on which end. And where's the plumbing go, and you know, like all of that sort of thing. So we decided that we wanted all of the utilities at the back, and we only wanted one door. So we put the bedroom and then the bathroom with the door across the bathroom.
One internal door.
Yeah, one internal door.
Yeah, because the more of those things that you build, like that's
The-
every, you know, every stud wall you put in is at 90 millimeters in terms of the stud and the sheeting
Yeah.
that's on the outside of it.
And when
90
you're talking about
millimeters is a lot.
2.4 meters, like...
So that's a fairly good point. Shipping container is inside about 2.4. It's just a little bit under by the time you skin it with walls and that sort of thing. It's about 2.4 meters wide. So layout wise, you're pretty limited in options. Like some houses have hallways that wide.
I know. We didn't want to sacrifice our king bed.
Yeah.
So we had to work that out.
How that would fit in there. Yep.
I wanted a decent sized kitchen because I love cooking. What I didn't factor in when we designed it, and maybe it would change what I do now if I had my time over again, is I didn't factor in the outdoor side of things. Because we've got that lounge area in between the bathroom and the kitchen that's a bit of dead space at the moment because we spend all of our time outside.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I knew that would happen, and I said that would happen. You were like, "Oh, are you sure you want to make the kitchen this big?" And I'm like, "Yes, because I think we're going to spend all of our time outside." And we do.
Yeah.
But like the application of that and the actual experience of that, I'm like, "Oh, I probably would have done things a little bit differently."
What do you think you would have done different?
Probably would have made the kitchen a bit bigger.
Oh, really? Okay.
If I had have known that I didn't need a lounge room inside. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because we don't spend all of our days inside.
And it's just the two of us.
Yeah.
Like if it's, I mean, I guess like the kids are here now and we do eat dinner together sometimes, most of the time.
But it's outside. Even in the winter.
But realistically, it is just the two of us. If it's raining, we don't need a lounge and a TV. We just like lie on the bed and, you know, watch Netflix on an iPad sort of thing. Like there's so many, actually that's an interesting one because even moving from the cottage to here, we're missing one piece of that puzzle. And that is the cottage that we moved into on that farm was a 3-bedroom, no, 3-bedroom cottage.
Plus
and
a
so
little
our kids
studio.
had a room each, but it had this semi-detached studio sort of under the porch roof line, but it was its own little room.
And it was 4x4?
4x5 maybe, yeah.
That was ours.
So that was our bedroom / office, you know, our space.
Lounge.
Piglet raising area. that did happen in there. But I guess what I'm saying is there's another step that we took that maybe probably goes into the mix, which was we barely lived inside that cottage. Our kids did. That was their domain. So even in terms of having a lounge, there was a lounge and we had a big screen TV and that we didn't really use it. Every now and then we'd do like a family movie night or a, you know, something on the PlayStation or whatever.
But if we ate dinner, we ate outside.
We sat outside.
Every single time.
Yep. And so other than the kitchen and the fact that there was one bathroom, so we didn't have an ensuite, our space was that little studio. And so we really, in terms of, I'm just thinking about that when you're saying about not needing a lounge room, we ditched that idea of a lounge room a long time ago. I've got a really nice chair.
Just for the two of us.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so that was actually a pretty easy transition to go, you don't actually need a lounge room. And you are really good at creating living spaces where you're going to exist. And so we've got all of these spaces around here. And
that follow the shade.
The kids joke about that all the time. It's like, oh, Mum's creating a new seating area.
A new seating area. What are you going to do there, Mum? Oh, I think maybe another seating area.
But, you know, like you have to break out of some of these mindsets. It's like, why do you have a lounge room? Why do you have a, you know, whatever it might be?
You just need a central area that you can all be in.
So one of those things that we did, and we've actually moved away from that now, was like, why do you even need a laundry? And we designed that kitchen cabinetry to be able to have the washing machine under the bench.
It was great until it leaked and ruined all my floorboards.
Yeah, but that probably wasn't the only reason we moved it out of there. It was once we moved here and realised
once you got a shed up,
that could go in the shed.
It's fine.
Your laundry doesn't have to be.
The thing is, it's as different as the people who are building it, designing it, living in it. Like some things matter more to people than others. Some people are like, no, I need my washing machine. It's fine. Let's design it that way. No problem.
Which we did. Like we looked for designs that incorporated a washing machine into a tiny home. And that's one design that we're like, that could work.
Yeah. So all of that to say, we built it, designed it for ourselves based on the journey that we have taken over the last 10 years, let's say, to get to this point. And we keep asking ourselves, like, oh, do you think this is a long-term thing for us? Like, are we going to stay in this long-term? Like, sure.
Maybe.
I don't know.
We hold a lot of that stuff pretty lightly, don't we?
I think that's the lesson.
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable. I'm not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
At all.
Yep.
My auntie, when she was teaching me how to make sourdough bread, she's like, you have a bigger bench space than me.
Yeah.
In her 40-year-old house.
Yep.
Like, we're pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
So with the deck, once it finally gets built, it'll be sweet. Because you don't need a huge house. I'm really loving not having a huge house.
That's part of our lifestyle though, isn't it? Like, we don't spend our time indoors like we did. We moved away from big flat screen TV, and like entertainment or pastime existed in that lounge space. We'd already had a mindset change about a lot of that stuff. And so we didn't need to create spaces around those activities because they weren't our existence was outdoors, was gardening, was, you know, raising livestock. And even when we were relaxing, it was around a fire outside. Really. So other than a rainy day, which, okay, it's not all the time. I suppose if we lived in a really wet environment, but then you'd just design it for that, wouldn't you? Yeah. You'd put a nice big undercover, which we will have eventually. You know, the shade sail will get replaced with a proper roof and all that. Yeah, something you mentioned that I thought I'd just draw attention to was the practicality side of designing it with like utilities on the back. That came from my experience. Like, we had some really great experiences and building of skills working on that farm. We kitted out a shed and turned it into a house. Yeah, it turned a shed into a little family home. And so we got quite a lot of experience working with plumbers and electricians and carpenters. And I just was alongside of those guys all the time, just like, why do you do that? And why do you choose that material? And why this and why that? And renovating the cottage as well. Yep. So actually that's a good one, because when we first moved into that cottage, I don't think I'd ever even seen a copper pipe before. But do you remember you went away traveling? I wanted a dishwasher. That's right, you wanted a dishwasher. You scored a dishwasher off Marketplace, and my goal was, while you were away, you were traveling or something, that I was going to install the dishwasher. And it sent you into a neuron holy crap, breakdown. I had no idea. You were like beside yourself. I was pulling weatherboards off the front of the house going, how do you even get into these walls? And then discovering that, 60-year-old houses were made of hardwood studs. And so in terms of putting holes through them for running pipe and that, and then all this copper pipe work that was soldered, it wasn't, now there's fancy push together joins and stuff. You learned by doing, for sure. That was a deep end learning thing, but I think that was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about plumbing. I determined to learn it. And when you work in agriculture, you actually have to learn quite a lot about plumbing, because water is pretty key. But because of some of those experiences, I've learned a couple of things. One of my philosophies is to not lock things in if you don't have to. Like, keep things flexible, because you just don't know what you're going to want to change in 5 years' time. And when we worked on that farm, kind of the previous management and that they loved welding things, they loved concreting things, they loved everything was fixed. And so I would come along going, we need to expand this area, or we need to build a new XYZ. Oh, that's going to be a mission, because to pull apart what's in place. And so I approach a lot of design stuff now from the accessibility point of view of, what if I want to change it in 5 years' time? And that might not always be the best idea, but I'm glad for it now, because now, having picked up and moved this container home to where it is now, it was just so I designed all the plumbing to be on the back and external. All of the electrical work is on the back. Not that we've had to change anything. That's all done properly in the walls and that. But so much of that stuff was accessible to the point of view of, when it came time to pick it up and move it, disconnect it, quite literally unplug it. We could do that again if we wanted to. Yeah, if we go, do you know what? In 5 years' time,
Get a
like this
crane,
view.
pick it up.
Bring the crane. I don't want to. And maybe when we go to build a deck and that sort of thing, that's going to cement quite literally some things in place. But just that mindset of, making things, that's probably based on a little bit my skills. Like I don't feel like, well, I'm not a qualified plumber, so I wanted to do things that I could get my plumber friend to come and check. So if I put it on the outside, it was easier.
Yeah.
But also just that flexibility in design and that sort of thing. Is there anything you would massively change? So you've said you'd probably not have such a big living space. You'd make that more about the kitchen.
Yeah, I have thoughts about maybe doing some built-ins because we don't at the moment have anywhere for, like we did have a really big library, all of your granddad's books and
Well, still do, but
inherited, like that library was quite large. We did downsize that a lot, but we do have some things that we haven't got a space for yet.
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking, do we do some built-ins where that lounge area is?
Oh, okay.
And make it, where's all our board games go? Like, that's a really important thing for our family.
Yeah, okay.
There's things like that I'm sort of rethinking the design of, but I won't do anything until we've got the deck and undercover area because that's your big space. Like in terms of taking up a lot of space, dining and living is huge. It's actually bigger than your lounge, your kitchen and your bedroom, really, because those things are big. Couches are big. Yep. And dining table, they take up a lot of real estate. So by putting them outside, we'll be able to make that inside a little bit more multi-purpose. So.
And we might find anyway, because we're big into fire cooking, outdoor cooking. We've got plans and designs to do like an outdoor kitchen as an extension of that kitchen.
And a wood oven.
Yeah, wood-fired oven. A few things like that, which was always kind of on the cards. And so whilst it feels like now that maybe the design isn't quite working for us, we might find that once we've built this space in front of it,
we might be able to reimagine a little bit of the inside.
Yeah, or we might not have to change much at all.
Yeah. I wouldn't, I lie in bed going, I'm completely fine here. I'm not feeling closed in on. It's quite cozy, easy to keep tidy.
Yeah. Do you feel it's claustrophobic at all? That might be a question that people have about going to a tiny home.
Only when it's bad and I'm in a bad mood. The time that I dislike it the most is when there's a lot going on. I'm trying to cook dinner. The dogs are under my feet. It's raining outside, so you can't move. There's not as much space to engage with. And I'm trying to cook and the dogs are literally under my feet. That's when I go, oh, I hate living in a tiny house.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's fine.
And there's some things that, like, we never really intended to have a desk in there. And so obviously
we decided to start a YouTube channel.
That's right. So I spend a fair bit of time at a desk now editing videos, which is not something that we really planned for or imagined. I think when we were imagining this, we were like retirement and or Airbnb. So why do you need a desk?
Yeah. I mean, I work, but I'm on a laptop and
a lot more
honestly,
mobile.
This is where I work. Like, it's
And
beautiful.
I would probably too, actually, if it wasn't for the fact that you need kind of a beefy sort of a machine to do video editing.
But we're looking at, I mean, all of that's, we live in a tiny house, but your shed is bigger than our tiny house.
True.
And if we weren't homesteading, we probably wouldn't need a shed like that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot, you have really set yourself up with the tools and the equipment to be able to do anything. In that shed, we have a plan to make a dry store and
food storage.
a food storage. And we're going to convert a little bit of that into a studio for you.
Yeah. So
just
a study
in terms
office.
of, is that tiny home cheating? Does it really matter? Like, we're building what we need.
That's an
Do you know what I mean?
phrase, tiny home cheating. It would be interesting to go back through some of those episodes of like living big in a tiny home and look at some of the things that people do that you might call tiny home cheating. Yeah. Like, what parts of their life have they just moved outside, or what external facilities have they?
But it doesn't matter because you're just, it's whatever experience you want it to be.
Yeah.
So as we move, you know, as the channel grows and all of this grows and you need soundproofing and like there's realities to what you need for what we're doing, and there's realities to what we need because we're homesteading. Like, a lot of homesteaders will have a house that has got capacity to be able to store bulk food and preserve
Pantry
food.
or a basement or
Yeah.
yeah.
Because we don't have that, we need to create that. So we will.
I like the creativity of that though. Like,
me too.
you know, we're locked in to 12 meters by 2.5 meters, plus a deck when we start building that, and that'll change things a little bit as well. But sometimes restriction fosters creativity.
Absolutely.
Actually, no, I think almost always restriction fosters creativity.
Designing the kitchen in the tiny house was probably one of my most favourite things I've ever done, because it needed to be efficient, like maximum efficiency, minimal space. That was a cool challenge. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And some people will be like, why did you put open shelving? Like, that's so impractical. I'm like, no, that's what I wanted. I wanted open shelving because I love the things that I have.
And it forces you into, you are not allowed 16 different dinner plates because there's the 2 of us, and then occasional...
No, there's the 5 of us, really.
Yeah, all right, say all the kids are here for a weekend, which happens a lot.
Yeah.
All right, there's the 5 of us, and then maybe a couple of guests in that.
Yeah.
But the reality is we don't have, 20 different coffee mugs on a shelf. We've got some favourites. And that comes from that mindset thing, doesn't it? Like, that's why I say, like, moving into designing a tiny home sounds like a really cool experience, but the actual reality and practicality of moving into it is, I have to live without all of these kind of safety nets of, I don't have to do the dishes that often if I've got 20 different coffee mugs,
And we didn't have a dishwasher when we first moved here, and I have since put a half-size dishwasher in simply because it's a tiny home, and if I don't want to do the dishes every single time, they just sit on the bench. That's unacceptable to me. I can't focus if the bench isn't clear.
Yeah.
So having a dishwasher has made it so that we can just put dirty dishes in there and then do it every morning when the solar kind of
because,
kicks in.
and let's point this out, the bench is not just the bench for food prep. Like, it's often the bench where sometimes your laptop's on there and you're working things out.
I'm working at the bench,
Sometimes you've rolled out a big sheet of brown paper and you're sketching,
Yeah.
Some plans up,
Or I'm making sourdough and that takes space,
And then the sink is also not just the kitchen sink. Like, we don't have a sink in our bathroom, and that was intentional too. I've often thought we probably could install one above the toilet cistern if we really needed one.
I brush my teeth in the shower and I wash my hands in the sink.
We have one sink, and to be honest, the distance from the toilet to the sink is, sometimes it's the distance that's in
some really big bathroom.
If I think about that really big bathroom that we had at that last place, it was.
Yeah.
Like, I reckon the bathroom was nearly as long as that. Gosh. I mean, you know what, if you live in a massive house and that's your thing, make it your thing. Own it. But if it's not...
Not poo-pooing in it.
Yeah, which it just wasn't for us.
I think the big takeaway that I would want to communicate about tiny houses and building them, if you want to live in one, is don't just think because the idea is attractive that you can easily go from your 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-garage into a tiny home. That'll be a really painful process. There's things that you can do now to get ready for that. Nothing can prepare you.
That was going to be my question. Someone watching this who's, watched all those, tiny home shows and that, and it's like, that's like, they love maybe the romantic idea of that, but they're aware enough to know that it's probably not as easy as that. And not everyone has the opportunity to move to a farm and live in a farm cottage that's half the size of your last house. Like, that worked out for us.
It was probably part of the journey for us.
Definitely. But so someone who's considering it, what's your advice to them? How do they take intermediate steps to prepare for it?
Practice living tiny in a big house.
How do you do that? Lock certain bedroom doors.
Lock doors or lock cupboards. Like, just don't use cupboards. Set yourself a limit to that. Look at your linen cupboard. The linen cupboard's a big one.
Yep.
Is usually, like, we have 2 sets of sheets and 3 sets of towels. That's it.
Yeah.
Some people have got multiples of multiples.
Yep.
Just means I have to do washing every other day. Okay.
But that goes hand in hand with that busy lifestyle thing that we were talking about the other day. and you know, like part of shifting to homesteading, and the reason I think that tiny home and homesteading can go together, it doesn't have to be the method. Not every homesteader has to have a tiny home, and not every person who wants to live in a tiny home has to be about homesteading
Or
either.
living on land.
But well, true, yeah, it might be that you're doing this to, you know, put a granny flat on that. Like, there's a housing crisis right now. This could be a genuine solution to someone who's like, where are we going to live?
Yeah.
You know, well, mum and dad have got a nice big lawn. Is there an opportunity?
Any home is better than no home.
Yeah. And
Really.
there's genuinely homeless people right now.
Yeah.
And we're not talking like shopping carts and cardboard boxes on the streets type homeless.
Yeah, but the challenge is it's not easy to put a secondary, like the amount of regulations that go against providing solutions for your own family and housing is outrageous.
That definitely needs to change, and we've come up against that. And I get that question a lot in the comments, and my standard answer, and I'll say it again here, is get advice, because it's different everywhere you go. The red tape in this country is ridiculous.
Outrageous.
There needs to be, you know, think what you like about deregulation and all of that that's kind of happening in the world right now, but it is unbelievable how heavy our systems of governance are with red tape and paperwork, and expensive. The amount of reports and things that you've got to do and get done. And so that's why I say I watch some of these videos sometimes where there's a guy building a cabin in the woods, and I'm like, oh, I kind of wish I got to do what you did, because I bet nobody even knows you're there or can't be bothered driving the 15 kilometers down your dirt road to, to get to it.
How much easier would life be?
But if I think back 200 years, I was watching one of those shows, you know, old Western shows ages ago. It might have been Deadwood or something like that, where the sheriff is like building his own home. Like, number one, everybody knew how to do that. And number two, I bet he didn't have like planning like he literally, it was at the end of the street sort of thing. And I bet there weren't regulations and that, but you did the right thing anyway. Like, number one, you were skilled and you knew how to do it. And
you would build things to last because it was the right thing to do. None of this dodgy shit.
We're not so many generations away from that, but look at what has crept in terms of, like regulation and governance and that I'm sure comes from, in part, like a motivation to keep people safe and do things environmentally, you know, consciously.
Don't even want to talk about the energy efficiency requirements for an off-grid home.
It's stupid. Like,
it's outrageous.
We literally don't draw power from the grid, but the energy efficiency requirements that we're required to live under. You
don't get much more energy efficient than...
But doesn't that just go to show how broken the system is? That there's no... And when you quiz them about that sort of stuff, there's no...
They don't understand.
It doesn't fit on my spreadsheet. I can't
tick that box.
I don't have a box that says that you live that way. How far have we come then from, being responsible for your own, you know, everything, to now I just do what I'm told, and I need to pay $5,000 for that report and $1,000 for that.
And they've got you over a barrel, so you have to.
Yeah, so anyway, all of that to sort of say, I wish I could give some solid answers on how to do that, but just get expert advice. Work with what we've done. Work with your council, not against them, but at the same time, I don't know, there's a part of me that, like, I'm following a guy online at the moment, and one of his little phrases is "good people break bad laws." I'm like, oh, I like that a little bit. Parts of me are nervous to do that because you end up in hot water sometimes. But then I watch businesses as well just get away with murder and not follow the rules, and it's kind of like, the whole system's broken, isn't it? Anyway, we kind of went way around that. That was a big, huge tangent into what I think about the government and the world at large, but it sort of fits in it, doesn't it? And I guess what we're doing, living in a tiny home, is a break away from the, you want to do what now?
There's so many people that want to do it.
Move into a tiny home? I think there's so many people that maybe are coming to the realization that I don't have many other choices, and that could be a valid choice. But in fairness, and that's why we were upfront about the money, you've got to have some money up front to be able to do it. And our good fortune was to be able to pace that out over a period of months where we could.
We used all of our savings, though.
Absolutely everything went into it, and even then some store cards and things to kind of get us over the line and get it done in time.
That's because it turned into having to be a 6-week project.
Yeah, if we'd had 6 months to do it, we would have done it in But anyway,
we financed the kitchen and the bathroom.
and we just managed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that to say, be honest about it, there's not an El Cheapo way to do this.
Oh, there could be. Won't last.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And actually a little word of warning too, like be real careful about some of these container home places. I remember when we ordered the container, I learned only that same week after putting $7,000 for this.
Mm-hmm.
It was at a time when containers went a little bit crazy expensive.
Because it was just after COVID.
Yeah, because
lockdowns.
Yep. I talked to other people who'd bought 40-foot containers and they'd only paid $2,000 or $3,000 for them, and it was double the price because shipping had ground to a halt, and actual shipping containers were scarce as. But I learned just after I'd sent the money that there were these container scams.
I remember you were panicking so hard.
I freaked out because everything that I'd done...
That was one of the biggest parts of the actual whole build was the container.
Yeah, of course. And once that's gone, that was a good 10% of the money.
Yep.
That's a hard pill to swallow if that had been and it nearly could have been, like the process that we followed to buy it and transfer the money, and you buy it sight unseen. And I've learned some things. I would not put cash, I would not transfer cash. I would do that as a transfer on site or go see it and make sure that the place actually exists. But anyway, I did some ringing around and I found out that place, they're legit. A genuine place. And
then all the containers we bought have been from that same place.
It has this big forklift ding all the way through it, which we've masked reasonably well. But and in truth, there's different grade containers that you buy, and we didn't buy the worst one, but we didn't buy the best one. And so we knew there was going to be some of that.
We knew we were going to put a roof on top.
So we knew we had to buy watertight, vermin-proof, but that doesn't mean without some dings and things in it.
Painted it. It's fine.
Yeah, and we had that idea too. Do we weatherboard the front of it just for looks? I don't even see that anymore.
There's part of me that doesn't love just having a rectangle house.
Oh, yeah?
Because I am a huge fan of the old Queenslanders and houses that have a story and that have character and those sorts of things. And we were just talking on the weekend when we were driving somewhere that maybe we get an old church and bring it on the property. And we've always talked about renovating an old church. Maybe we do that in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that's like, I don't love the harsh lines and lack of character of a container home.
Right, yeah.
But we're going to be able to dress that up. I've got jasmine growing up one end. Like, there's things that we can
The shape of it will change entirely once it's got an actual roof over the top. And that'll feel very, very different. Yeah.
Do you love it?
It's not as important to me as it is to you. It is important to have, like, I'm house proud in some ways. In other ways, I don't see a lot of things that you see, and they're probably not. And that's just personality stuff. I think that's okay. But I don't hate it. Has it been easy for me to move into a tiny home? I still have my box of cables. I just keep it in the shed now.
We have a barrel of cables.
But it was definitely a journey we took together. And so that was important. And I think if we'd had to factor kids into the mix, and I've seen tiny homes where they do kids as well.
I don't know.
Wow, that would be an entirely different set of challenges I'm not sure about. But you make it work.
Totally.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people that do the tiny home thing because of the lack of options. And so you make it work.
It's a wonderfully clarifying experience.
Yeah.
You figure out what you need and what you don't need.
Yeah. From a maintenance point of view, which is part of my role on the homestead, I do love it. Like, there's very little that breaks down or goes wrong. And if it breaks down or goes wrong, I built it.
Yep.
So I've got a fair idea of why.
I love not spending all my time cleaning.
Yeah.
Part of that is not having children that live in the house. So not going to lie.
So would I do it again? Yeah, of course I would. Like, it was, and even
would I
just
recommend it? Yes.
From an investment point of view, I don't think it has a monetary investment value to it. It has something. Like, you could probably sell it for more than what you... Oh, you definitely could. Like, if we were to sell this, we would make money on our efforts. From an investment point of view, in terms of investing into your security, again, looking back to how our story worked out, and we didn't intend to be out here as early as we did or finish that farm job as soon as we did. But thank God that we just kind of,
Picked our house
were
up
guided by what was happening and were able to just pick our house up and have an option like that so many people don't have.
Yeah.
That to me is a greater investment than how much my term deposits are maturing by, or what. I clearly don't know finance all that well, but it comes back to, like we talked about it, why we bought land. I knew enough to know that for me, I could understand walking on a plot of land rather than what my money was doing in an investment. I'm not stupid, I understand that, but I needed tangible. And so building a tiny home was a tangible investment into our future.
And it was achievable for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And what a great challenge too to build it. So if people are out there going, could I do this? Yeah, you could. Yeah.
You can do anything.
Look at Jazz in WA building her container home with no skills, but probably a ton of advice. And I'd probably, wrap things up by saying that
When we first got married, would you have ever imagined that we would have built our own home like this?
No.
We had no clue.
But I do remember we would talk about building homes and that, but it was the script. We were following the script. It was it's going to be this, and it's going to have a media room, and it's going to have a library.
We do have a projector and a screen that will factor into the deck build.
Yeah, but we've done them tiny home design. Like our projector is a Coke can sized projector, and our screen is a pull down screen, that we'll mount out here somewhere. And yeah, no, of course not. That was, decades ago. But we were following the script, and that would actually have been hard, I think, if you designed your forever home. Your dream home.
No, but that's what some people want. They want to raise their kids, grow old in that one place. That's important to them. Good for you. I kind of feel like that about this place now, but I just never say never anymore.
Yeah, true. Which is, if I think about the word homestead, like I often think of, there's that homestead place out on the highway out there that's, 1800s. Some people think, and I probably did too as well. Actually, my brother was telling me this on the phone the other night. Where we grew up, there was a place called the something or other homestead, and it was like a big old, multiple bedrooms, kind of probably like housed workers and all that sort of stuff. So there's that can fit into the homestead mentality as well. Like if that's your bent, is to have space for all of that and to be able to do that and to host all the family gatherings, or I just think it doesn't fit if it's for the sake of having stuff.
If it's keeping up with the Joneses, you're always going to lose.
Yeah, to me that's not homesteading. Don't have stuff for stuff's sake.
Yeah.
So no, I don't regret it. I do love it.
In a roundabout way, I think I answered your questions.
No, definitely.
The story arc of Kirsty and tiny homes.
Yep. Yep. And like you say never. This could just be version 1. We might make a half a dozen of them, and
we tend to do outrageous things.
Yeah. I think that's enough about the tiny home.
Me too.
Yeah. See you on the next one.